Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
Well, hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I'm Kisma, and as always, when we have a guest, I get really excited. As our listeners know, we don't have guests very often, so when we do have someone on, you know that they're going to be a very interesting, elevated, and amazing human. And that's what Raj Jana is for us today. We're going to have a conversation with Raj, who is an impact-driven entrepreneur and podcast host. And we'll hear about his podcast as well. And Raj is passionate about using capitalism and business as a vehicle and a means to make the world a brighter place. And before we bring Raj on, I just want to check in. Nick, how's your week going?
Oh, it's flying by.
Flying by.
It really is, yeah. It's been a fantastic week. And a lot of, to me, it was a week to where I kind of pulled back a little bit.
Space.
A little bit of space, a little bit more space and more contemplative approach to some of the things that I've been doing. And to me, that's often a little bit of a scary space because there's that other part of me that's like, I should be doing more. I should be doing more.
Let's not use that word should.
Yeah, right. But that's, there's a little bit of that going on. And then the other side of that, which is, okay, this is actually really important because for me and how I'm built, having that ability to step back and to take that broader perspective and to really look at where the ship is headed and what's going on and to get honest about some of the areas that are not working as I would like and how to correct that. Like that's incredibly valuable time spent.
It's a nice segue after our podcast last week on the fear of missing out.
Well,
hopefully that inspired you.
I've been cleaning that up. It did a lot. And then I did notice a little bit of that coming up as I took that step back to just really have a little bit more space and to really have a better look at the landscape of where we're headed.
Love it.
That's so how my week. How about you?
Yeah, very good. Very busy. Lots of beautiful clients coming in here at our office in Common Grounds in Carlsbad. So it's been good. But let's get to it. Let's bring Raj on because he's amazing. I'm so excited for our listeners to meet him. So Raj Jana, welcome to Illumination Podcast.
Super excited to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Sure. And you're coming to us from Houston, Texas, right?
Yes, I am. Grew up in Houston, had a little roundabout where I went to school in Austin, lived in New Orleans for a while, and then Houston just called me back home. So here I am.
Yeah, that's so cool. I hear so many good things about Houston. I visited there just once several years ago, but hope to get back. And, the very special thing about what's going on in your world right now is Javapresse Coffee Company. And I happened to meet you at an event with Chris Winfield, a good friend of both of ours and a mentor. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I've heard about Javapresse Coffee and you stood up and introduced yourself. And I was like, we got to get him on the show. So I'm sure you get this a lot. But like coffee, why coffee? When did coffee enter your life?
Well, I started the company back in September of 2015. I was a full-time employee as an engineer working in oil and gas. And, I really just wanted something different. So I got into entrepreneurship and I was dabbling in a bunch of different things. I was learning how to sell products. I was just kind of figuring it out. And so when we first started, I approached coffee and coffee products more as like, oh, this is a great business idea, not necessarily this is a great idea for my soul. And so nice. it was a great niche. And so I came into it from there. But then after I launched and we had some success, I was surrounded by a lot of people who spent a lot of time at the company. And so one of the guys who was a person who stayed like in my cubicle mate, a guy named Jerry, he was almost an early mentor of mine. And he spent about 37 years at the same company. So this is a guy that we would consider a lifer in the words of the corporate jargon. And he'd been around for a while. He was always mentoring me on like the way of the land and how to kind of navigate corporate relationships and responsibilities. And he was a really good friend of mine. And but he was really close to retirement. And so he would always talk like our conversations went from work to almost play. And it was more about just everything he wanted to do. And all, like he was building a woodshed to house a lot of carpentry projects that he was having. And he was really, really, really excited about this next chapter of his life where he could finally be happy. And with about 3 months left until retirement, Jerry had a heart attack and died. And that experience was a real wake-up call for me.
Yeah.
I was selling products online. I was trying to create this new life for myself, but I was working myself to the bone. I looked around me. Everybody was just shooting for retirement or shooting for that vacation or shooting for after work when they can finally be happier. Everything was always in the future.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was trapped and surrounded by this ideology. And I thought about it, and, I think it comes from my family. I mean, my dad came to the U.S. with $60 in his pocket, and he has, $60 in his pocket, and he's just kind of created this life for himself, but he's worked his butt off the entire way. And so he never made time for himself. And the idea of something like that happening to my father broke me. And I think that's when we went from just a company that was selling coffee products to people who like coffee to a company who wanted to use coffee as a vehicle to helping people live happier lives. Because I can't go and convince people. And I realized that, I was surrounded in a corporate environment. I can't help people or I can't tell people to go, empty out your life savings and go buy that dream car or that Mercedes, whatever you want. Like, that's not practical, right? How many people are going to listen to little old me, 23 years old at the time, telling him to just go carpe diem? And I can't tell them to quit their jobs and travel the world like they've always wanted to either. Like, those are just not practical solutions. So for me, that very moment is where that light bulb happened. It was, you know what? I don't need to be telling them to do these things. I can help them experience everyday rituals and everyday experiences that they already have in their lives and they're already making time for, and help them, give them the tools so that they can view these rituals and everyday experiences through a different light, so that they can start to appreciate and infuse gratitude, mindfulness, happiness into everyday experiences, which then helps them see all the other things in their lives through a flavor of zest and almost like this passion for life because of something that they realized through one specific medium. And so that's kind of how we do what we do now. We just help people use coffee to live a happier life by transforming the ritual of making coffee into a meaningful daily experience. And so all of our products really kind of focus in on using both of your hands and making time for something that fuels you during your day. And we create a lot of content around, the podcast kind of came in after we were having success selling the products and people were really connecting with the ritual. And so then we started creating more content and just experiences and different things so that we can almost enhance that ritual into something that acts as a gateway to more fulfillment in every part of your life. That's how we got to where we are today. We've been in business about 2 years now, having a ton of fun, meeting a lot of people. We launched a line of coffee. We started off with equipment and then we moved on to coffees now. So now we have coffee and equipment, and it's been a real joy. And I'm grateful for just where we are now and how many people we're helping along the way. So it's been fun.
Well, it's really exciting. I can't wait to. I was looking at your website.
Oh, we've been stalking your website.
It's beautiful, by the way. Really well designed.
And just this morning, Nick's like, I think I'm going to wean off coffee. I'm like, not after our guest today. That's not going to happen.
All right. Well, to be determined. But yeah, I'm struggling with it right now. But you brought up two really important things that I wanted to dive a little bit more into. One is the addiction to the future. And how many times we have this misconception that all of a sudden when X, Y, and Z happens, things are going to open up, or as soon as I get a chance to breathe, everything's going to be okay. And I think that's pretty rampant in our culture. And I'm wondering if you can talk just a little bit more about how the rituals or the sense of ritual around things really helps to get people out of that and into what's happening right now and what that does for them in their lives.
I believe that rituals are almost like anchors for you. Everyone has rituals. Whether you think it's a ritual, you might call it something else. You might call it a break. You might call it a favorite pastime. Whatever vernacular and verbiage you want to put to the word ritual, all a ritual is you taking time to do something for yourself, right? So the ritual of making coffee, the ritual of sitting there and enjoying time with your family, whatever it is, it's your anchor. When I think about rituals, I think about adding an intentional process to something that doesn't need to be intentional, which is what transforms something from a routine into a ritual or an activity into a ritual. So when I say adding intention, like look at coffee as an example, right? You could take two routes with coffee. You could hit a button, allow the coffee to come out, and it just be something that fuels you as you go. Or you can sit down, take a couple minutes to grind your coffee, brew your coffee, sit down with it, smell the coffee, and appreciate the process of you having that cup of coffee. That turns it into a ritual. That turns it into an experience that you have with something inanimate or something that is out of the world. It's almost like you're creating space for yourself. And I think we're all really busy. And I don't think we should discount from the fact that we're all entrepreneur, or I'm an entrepreneur and I'm working all the time. I don't have time to take care of myself. That's at least the story I used to tell myself.
Yeah.
But what I realized is that rituals and everyday things that you can squeeze into your day almost take over. And when you start to look at these rituals and these routines and these activities or whatever you make time for yourself for, whether it be a minute, 10 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever you feel comfortable putting aside for yourself, when you add an element of a ritual to it, it almost becomes like your safe space. And it's this thing that you can go to. Like when I was in corporate America, I know a lot of people that would go on walks. Like that was their safe space. They would step out into nature and just take a 5-minute walk. That was a daily ritual for them. For me, like it's my coffee, like even like anywhere, like it's just, or like me texting a loved one, like that's a ritual. If it's something that you do consistently, no matter how big or small, I think the connotation of a ritual is just that you're intentionally creating space for you to breathe in a world where we're always moving as fast as we can.
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like as you talk about it in terms of grinding coffee, making coffee, I mean, it's very instinctually based, smelling the coffee, tasting it. That ritual can then become a habit of simply being present.
Yes.
Or simply being aware, so that if someone has a job in corporate America, when they're on the phone, they're on the phone. When they're on their computer, like there's a bigger, stronger, deeper sense of being present. If one is an entrepreneur, the time that they put into their business is amplified quantumly just because they know how to be present.
100%. And I love that because I think presence is the ultimate goal. But most people don't know how to be present. And I don't think that's anyone's fault. I just think that we're in this age right now of technology and flashy objects and shiny opportunities. I mean, like we have squirrel attention. I know I do. I definitely do. So when I think about it, like when I think about someone like myself, like I think presence is something that's practiced, but I think presence only comes after someone becomes aware that presence is even real. So, and so that's really the mission behind why I chose coffee versus like now why I'm continuing to grow coffee is because coffee is a part of everyone's day, or not everyone's day, but it is a part of a lot of individuals' days. Right. And most people who drink coffee aren't actually present. Like they're actually just everyday people who are going through life and they've just been going through the motions. They don't really pay attention to like a lot of people, like especially when you have a pool as big as like billions of people, which is what the consumption of coffee is. It's billions. You have a lot of different kinds of people. And so when you take it from that standpoint, for me, all I want to do is just help people notice presence, because once they notice presence, they can start applying it in every part of their life. And so like coffee is just a gateway. That's all it is. It is a gateway to you then applying presence with your family, with your workouts, with your business time, with your focus time at work, with your meetings. I mean, it really is almost like a version of self-care that uses something that you already have. You just didn't know you really had access to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. And you bring up another really interesting point, I think, when you talked about the impracticality of somebody going out and buying that dream car, or going on that vacation, or quitting and traveling the world. Like it's very impractical, and it's always based on something else that they don't have. And what you did is take something that's already present in everyday life and transform it into something truly useful and magnificent that adds so much more depth to it. To me, that resourcefulness is the spirit of entrepreneurship right there.
Yes.
So I just think that's the coolest thing. I love that.
And it's not getting caught up in that one desire satiated, go after another. It's like, that's right in front of you. Now just transform it into a way of being that is different. Yeah. It's really genius. Way to go, Raj.
Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence, guys. No, well, I'll say this, I had a lot of great mentors who are able to identify my blind spots. One of my favorite, one of my mentors, Yannick Silver, he's a huge proponent of just impact and using business to deliver impact. And he's been a really big mentor of mine as I've sort of crafted my own message and my own purpose through my business. But I really think that business is more fun when you're helping people. When you go back to thinking about who you're serving, and really think about the experience of that person and really wanting to help that person, it almost like reinvigorates you and it turns into fuel. Because think about it, what excites us the most? It's seeing good results. When I see a happy customer, I get ecstatic. When I see that something I did help somebody, it's like, oh my gosh, I want more of this. When you're chasing that experience over money or money and all that stuff's like a part of you doing this. But I really, really, really believe that if you want to hit those different milestones in your business, in your life, you have to go beyond yourself. And when you add this element of just thinking about the customer and how you want to serve that customer, how many different ways can you serve that customer? Is the way I'm serving them right now even serving them? I started asking myself a lot of these questions, and it became almost like this rabbit hole of I don't think I am. I'm just selling. In the beginning, it was just I'm selling a commodity. It's a price-driven product. I'm just going to sell it. It's going to serve a use. That's it. But really, for me, what jazzes me up and what wakes me up every day is just the ability to spread a positive message. And I think that's what really kind of wanted me to start the podcast. It really kind of turned into this amazing little opportunity of enhancing a message through a different way. So I just think that relentless, almost focus on the customer, it creates that resourcefulness. The resourcefulness doesn't come from a pursuit of money. It comes from a pursuit of solving problems for the person in front of you.
Yeah. And I feel like the money, we talk about money in our show and our teachings is a great energy and it's important. And I look at it as a result of serving, like you said, creating impact. And that's such a different energy and perspective than when someone's like, well, what can I get from that person? Wow. Okay. I'm going to do this, but what can I get? And when we go into that, what can I get? It's such a selfish attitude, which in terms of the energy frequency really diminishes things and doesn't really work at all. And people, I think, can dig some very deep ditches by only focusing on what they can get rather than how they serve. And I love that idea of going above and beyond. It's perfect.
I think you and I talked about this, Kisma, when we met, but you get what you put in. Right.
Absolutely.
So energy is a constant state of flow. So if you're consistently helping people, it just comes back.
Right. It's a universal law.
It's the universal law, right? Yeah. So what goes up must come down. So if you're constantly and consistently just focused on that, abundance flows. And I never used to be a really spiritual person. It's definitely something that came after I quit my full-time job and started focusing on this full-time, just having to weather the roller coasters and just figuring out things. But one thing that has come to fruition every single time is the more I focus on just putting out as much value as I can in any way possible, whether it be for a customer, whether it be for a friendship, whether it be for loved ones, whether it be for myself, even in the form of self-care, the results compound. And it is just this consistent state of just adding more value than you're receiving. And as long as you keep the scales tipped towards the value side, I just think that eventually things have to work out. Because that's just how the world and the universe and life just flows. So anyways,
I love that. Excuse me. It's an expectation of, and an understanding that the laws are working.
Yeah. The laws are the laws.
Yeah. It's just a matter of time. You spoke a lot about vision, and it seems from what I'm hearing it sounds like you've spent a lot of time just really crafting that and spending the time to be clear in that. I was wondering a couple things about this. Number one is, how important is that in a business in your mind to have that? Because I've certainly seen entrepreneurs struggle with that. And then on the other side of that, the second part of that is, okay, I've seen a lot of people also who have a really big, clear vision and they get absolutely nowhere with it.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, there's a lot of people that get stuck in the vision. They're dreaming all the time, but they're not working. But then there's a lot of people that work and they don't dream. I think you need a balance. Like the analogy I like to think of is it's like a car almost. It doesn't matter if you have a full tank, it's the fastest car on the planet, it's the greatest engine. If you don't know where you're headed, you're going to burn that engine into the ground. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how great the car is. It doesn't matter if it's electric. It just doesn't matter. Right. But on the same front, if you flip that story and you say, all right, well, if I know exactly where I'm going and I'm just so excited about where I'm going, I'm just going to keep thinking about where I'm going, but I don't get in the car and start driving, you're still not going to get there either. Ultimately, there has to be a marriage of almost practicality with an idea of where you want to go. It's not like you need to have everything mapped out to the T. I personally spend a lot of time thinking about my vision because it inspires me. But I spend maybe like one day a week. So every Wednesday, I don't take any meetings on Wednesdays. And Wednesdays are my days to just vision board, think about what I want, brainstorm, see how we're doing, just stay in the clouds. I like to really say you stay in the clouds. So one day in the clouds, 6 days in the dirt.
That's good. Good.
I really think that if you don't know where you're going, you will get distracted along the way. So for me, I like to really think about it and Cameron Harold, who's another business coach, he came up with the idea of called a 2020 vision, or a vivid vision. And a vivid vision is kind of like you putting it down on 7 pieces of paper or something like that about just what your company looks like by a year that you define. So for me, my vivid vision's based for 2020. So I'm like, all right, in 2020, these are the things that are important to me. Now, when I work every day and I remember my vision, obviously the vision's going to change, it's going to mold, it's going to grow. But because I know just a vague idea of what I want my future to look like, I can then work backwards. So it's almost like a visualization technique. By you crystallizing and knowing where you want to go, you start to subconsciously sort of lay down the path to where you want to be. And then when you take action, even if you don't feel like you're working on the right things, you're subconsciously working on things that are leading you towards your vision because you've put it down on paper and described it to yourself in incredible detail. So I think that you really need both. You cannot do one without the other. And I think that's where people get stuck because, if you have a vision, now resourcefulness gets easy because you can think of different ways to get to that same point. I'm not saying that I have a roadmap figured out, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. That's going to get me to this point. It's almost like I've got this far out point out there. It doesn't matter how many squiggly lines I draw to get there, but I know where I'm headed, which then allows me to pivot and scale and make changes to my day-to-day plan without really being married to any one way of doing business. And so I think all of that is really the culmination. You need both.
Yeah. That flexibility of thinking too is absolutely critical. I think that's one of the things, I don't want to get way off on a tangent, but I think that's actually one of the things that's really jamming up the conversations in our country is the rigidity of thinking and the inability to tack and move and be flexible with how we look at things and how we communicate and how we absorb information and translate that information. So that's really really, really, really cool. One of the variations that I see around vision is people get stuck thinking that they have to have like this, it has to be a certain way. Like I have to have this super grand vision, and like their vision isn't like good enough, or they have to spend more time like expanding it. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that too. Is it okay to start small, or does it have to be a big grand thing? Like how does that fit into the individual's life?
I personally have always believed that perfectionism is just another form of procrastination. Another way of saying it is a 90 is still an A. So if you got a 90 on your test in college, would you be ecstatic or would you be upset about the world that you didn't have 100? I mean, it depends, like, right? I mean, like I was perfectly fine with a 90. So like this analogy works with me, but it's like, so when you think about it from that standpoint, you think about a vision, again, it doesn't need to be perfect because all you're doing is just being clear about where you want to go. So if my vision is to sell my company, everything I do right now is going to be in line with, I'm going to ask myself the question, is what I'm doing right now going to serve that vision? So it's almost like putting guardrails on yourself. You don't need to have the guardrail set up like, oh, I'm going to sell my company for 24.6, whatever. And I'm going to do it with this level of this many people. And I'm going to have this many stations and this many. Those are goals, but that's not a vision.
Right.
You can be elaborate and very detailed with your goals, which I think is incredible. Like you need that. Being driven with your goals is incredibly, and being very specific with your goals is very important. But being more like top level with a vision about what you want, I think as long as you just know where you're headed, know who you're helping, know where you're headed, and know what would lead you to believe that you achieved the purpose you achieved. Like just what is the goal that you could achieve to say, you know what, I did it right. And as long as you're following that path, I think everything else is just lagniappe. Like it's just a bonus.
Yeah. I know our listeners have heard us talk about this, like the vision. We often use the word ideal. And if the ideal is bigger than ourselves and somehow serves humanity, like you toss that ideal up, that vision, and then you go to work, and you take action and you're committed. Yet when it serves more than just us, help comes. It's like it's a magical miracle way. So I feel like you're saying the same thing, right? A bigger vision, take action, help is going to come, especially when that vision encompasses others.
I have never believed that more than I do now. The more vocal I've become about just who I'm helping, how I'm helping them, and showing just what we're doing. I feel like I'm getting so much support that I just didn't even realize was available to me. And I mean, I'm just floored by just some of the requests I get, some of the mentors that come in my life. I mean, it really is, people want to help good people. People want to help other people that are working on things that are helping people. Well, that was really like a long run-on sentence. But anyways, that's a good one. I was like, how did I just say that? But no, like it is though. I mean, like, I think a vision does a lot for you, but I think it's almost intangible.
Yes.
It's like for me, like a vision inspires my team because they're excited about where we're going. Right. So like it almost serves as like this fuel for them. So like they don't just look like they're doing work, that they're not just coming to a job, they're doing meaningful work. And that's communicated through a vision. And so, like I think a vision is really important, especially as you scale. Like when you're small, you can do everything yourself. But if you don't have a vision and you're building a team and people unite on an idea, like, oh my God, you know what? Like we're all going to do this together. Like, cause that's how you go to new heights. And that is a vision. A vision is something that it's a collective goal that a group can fantasize about and actualize through daily work and goals. At least that's how I've seen it manifest in my own life. And I'm constantly learning and it's evolving, but it's been amazing to see the support just because we're vocal about the vision we have.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Anytime that I've had challenges with team has been because they didn't understand where that piece fits and how it really fits in the bigger picture and why that's actually important. But once that's clear, then their own creativity starts to come in and they're like, oh, I understand where we're going. And then they can start to really let their selves express in a way that lets their best come out too.
Yeah.
I always thought that was just a fascinating thing and so easy to get frustrated with like human beings being human beings and things like that. And it's like, no, like the vision is really important. And as the leader, it's so important to make sure that that's clear and expressed.
Yeah, no. And the earlier you start, the better. because,
Yeah.
like retention is one of the toughest things to do with employees. The earlier you start perfecting this vision, crafting the message, sharing it, and making people feel like they are a part of something from the ground up, the more chances you have of these people committing themselves to really helping you achieve this message. Like money isn't going to be the thing that drives them anymore. It's not going to be, I mean, obviously money's important, lifestyle is important, but it's not going to be the thing that makes them tick. I think one of the most important things a leader can do is have a vision, but more importantly, be able to effectively communicate it. Because having a vision and keeping it to yourself isn't doing anyone any good.
I wanted to turn back a little bit towards your mentor, Jerry.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about maybe some of the most important lessons that he taught you at the time, and what sorts of things that you really took away from that relationship.
I think a lot of the lessons that I took away from Jerry actually unfortunately happened after his death. I mean, he taught me a lot about how to manage and kind of move myself through corporate America. He made me realize what I didn't want more than he made me realize what I did. But I think one of the most important things I learned from that entire experience and him in general was actually the next week when his wife came in. So Jerry's married. I don't believe he had any kids. It was just him and his wife. His wife was retired. She came in to clear out his cubicle. And that was probably one of the most sobering moments of my life, if I can think about it. Just seeing her almost go through his stuff and realize all these things that she either didn't know or she was learning all this stuff about him. And even we all came over and we were saying we were sharing our condolences and saying sorry. And, I'll never forget, she was just tomorrow's not guaranteed. And when you hear it, people say that a lot, that's a common message that's kind of spread around. But when you hear somebody who's gone through a tragedy like that say it at that stage in their life, they're not saying it from an age of, at 23, 24, they're saying it at the age of 57, 58, when they've spent their entire lives waiting for something. When you hear it from that voice and that perspective, it moves you. Like when somebody gets a speeding ticket or you're driving along, you get a speeding ticket for the next maybe 20 or 30 minutes, you're driving really slow. You're two hands on the steering wheel,
10 and 2.
You're watching everything. You're I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again. But then all of a sudden, a week later, you're back to speeding. You're back to cutting corners. You're back to being the way you are because it wasn't an experience that stuck. The crazy thing about me was that I was cubicle mates with Jerry, and they didn't take his name tag away for almost a year. I would come in every day to work and I would see his name tag and an empty cubicle and be reminded of these moments, of these things that I was learning. Unfortunately, I don't know if I even have because this one overshadows all the lessons I learned when he was alive.
Absolutely.
This one lesson was so powerful for me,
right,
and so moving for me, because that did a spark for me. I was dabbling online before that happened. I was dabbling selling products before that happened. After that happened, I started chasing business and entrepreneurship with almost this relentless focus and passion that I don't know I would have had if I didn't experience that for myself. So I carry it with me. It's a part of me now, but I think the greatest lessons often come when they do come when you're least expecting them. But I think they only come when you're ready to hear them.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jerry has, through you, also touched how many lives? It's that could have been the thing where it just catapulted you ahead and to ask so many questions. And when you talked about you didn't feel like you were spiritual before and you became more spiritual. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a Jerry's roast special coming up.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. It's crazy because I don't talk enough about that. I mean, we share the story and stuff, and I'm super proud of his influence on us. But I just think it's such a sobering reminder. I want to honor the legacy. These messages that we share, everything we do through the company now. Every farmer we partner with, every product we sell is really sort of driven by this idea of helping people learn this lesson without them having to experience it themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's come down to. So whether I'm telling
Yes.
Jerry's story or I'm telling another story or I'm telling my own story, I'm telling my father's story, we're using the art of story to just make people feel that, you know what, today is the day that you start to live your life, love your life, and grow through abundance and happiness that you likely haven't been experiencing already.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. I love that. And, speaking of growing and manifesting and amplifying, let's hear a little bit about your family. You mentioned your father. Is he in the business with you now?
My parents are both amazing and they help me out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They're not technically in the business, but
Mm-hmm.
they are huge influences. If something
Oh.
hits the fan, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're the first ones to come and help. I'm very grateful to have such amazing parents who've supported me and have just been there
Yeah.
for me. I do have a little brother. He's in the military, who inspires me too, just in general, just the type of person he's growing into. So my family has been my rock for.
What branch of the military is he in?
He just graduated from the Naval Academy about a year ago, so he is a
Nice.
Navy pilot now. So he's currently
Wow.
learning how to fly stuff,
Wow.
which is fun. I
That is so
mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Because we come from an Indian background. These aren't traditional career paths.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just even from that, like just having parents that are very supportive of kind of
Yeah.
the way we've grown and the way we choose to grow has been great. But
Yeah.
my family has been probably one of the biggest inspirations for me. I mean, my dad, I said this, but my dad's come here with nothing in his pocket. And he worked his butt off to just create such an abundant life for me, my brother, my mom, and family back home. I mean, he's just always giving and so it inspires me. And he came here with nothing, and I have everything. I came here almost. I feel like I have a silver spoon in my mouth, and so it definitely is inspiration for me to just grow and give back as much as I can.
Right. Tell us a bit about the farmers who grow the coffee.
Sure. So we launched a specialty coffee club. So the coffee itself. I mean, one thing is we were selling equipment that helped create the ritual. I want to, like I said, we're always thinking of ways to enhance the experience. So the coffee club is our way of essentially sharing stories of impact-driven entrepreneurs in different countries. So we source our coffees from some of the most celebrated family-owned farms around the world, mostly Central and South America, and these are farmers that are really making a difference in their local communities. And we feature one every month. I mean, these are guys that set the standard for coffee quality, set the standard for coffee innovation, and they give back. And it's one thing for somebody with a lot to give back, right? Like somebody with a lot of money to give their wealth away, or somebody who is just like who has a lot of something giving it away. That's one thing. But when you see farmers who aren't traditionally getting paid a lot, I mean, these people, like just from you think about the coffee industry over the decades, like farmers have been oppressed for centuries. Like just like, it's a commodity. So like that, that $9 bag of coffee from at Walmart or wherever you buy your coffee. I mean, think about the entire supply chain and what that farmer is making. So when you think about it from that standpoint, traditionally farmers have been squeezed and they haven't been paid well. So when I meet farmers, and now obviously times are changing, like we pay our farmers incredibly well. And I know a lot of other coffee companies that are following suit with being more responsibly, like just more social responsibility and social entrepreneurship. These are farmers that don't make a lot of money, but they're still finding ways to just impact their local communities. Like, in April, we brought on a farmer from El Salvador, Roberto Zelaya, and Roberto teaches environmental sustainability to the ministry of El Salvador. Like, he takes that on himself to just teach them. He teaches kids how to treat the environment and how to love nature. And our April's coffee, we named it Soul Break because
I love it. I saw that on your website. I was like, look at that.
So we named it Soul Break to commemorate and honor his efforts to protect something like nature that cleanses our soul, it cleanses my soul every time I'm in it. And so, but when we tell the story of a farmer through a medium that we can appreciate, we essentially connect this third world experience with a first world ritual. And you bridge the gap with community, allowing people to feel better about the coffee they're drinking purely because they know who they're supporting. our coffees are really a gateway, and our farmers are, I mean, we do the easy work. Like, we work with amazing roasters who respect and want to honor these farmers, but the farmers are really doing the hard work. They're the ones setting the standards. They're the ones growing amazing crops. They're the ones who are putting themselves out there to make their own local communities something special and known globally. I mean, these are the guys that are doing the hard work, and I'm just lucky to sit here and tell their stories, because these aren't people that even care about telling their stories. That's what drives me crazy. There's so many people out there that can't stop talking about themselves. Stop talking about what they're doing and how great they are. But these are people that are changing communities and bringing so much zest and joy to the people in their own lives, that and they don't talk about it. They're just in their own world. And so I feel like we have a responsibility, and we take that responsibility pretty seriously, to really sit there and craft names and stories and colors and brand, almost like an unboxing experience for these coffees that do these farmers justice.
Well, you know what I love? I'm just going to get kind of woo. My audience knows, our audience knows, we'll do that every now and then. But it's like, when you talk about these farmers, you get so excited. And then the people in your coffee club, the people drinking your coffee, grinding the coffee, they're going to have a moment where they ponder the farmers. And so there's so much love going back in their direction. It's amazing. So it can't help but be this like beautiful circle of, they love what they do. They love the land. And now, you know, your people are sending them love. So everybody wins. It's just such a win-win.
Yeah, I wholeheartly agree. And it just feels good. And this goes back to business in general. Like, I mean, you know, doing this type of stuff just feels good. It feels right. It feels like a part of me now. And I just think that I think this is an underrated part of business, not something that's talked about enough. It's not something that's celebrated enough. This idea of just really giving and helping and wanting to tell stories. And I don't know. I mean, really, I mean, we were doing a lot of this already with the equipment, but the coffee club really opened my soul up in a way that's really allowed me to connect back with the reasons why I got into business in the first place.
Yeah, of course. And we'll have links to your website on our show notes, but just tell our listeners how they can find you right now.
Yeah. I mean, you just go to javapresse.com. And I'd love to create a page for you guys. All your listeners, you guys can get a free bag of coffee. So you can get your first bag for free with our coffee club. So you just go to javapresse.com/illumination, and you'll get to try.
That's so cool.
Our next roast. I think the next one. So we are finishing up. So this is, I don't know when this is going to air, but in general, if you buy it,
soon.
Soon. So if you buy it in June, we have Fresh Start, which is that's coffee from Panama. In August, we have an amazing coffee from Uganda called Quiet Storm. And so all these names have meanings. All these farmers have stories. Yeah. And
I love it.
You guys are interested in just learning more about the stories and supporting these farmers, come on over. We'll take care of you.
That's nice.
Amazing.
Yeah. That was amazing to have Raj Jana on from Javapresse Coffee Company. And you know, Nick, one of the things I was thinking about is when we were talking about the farmers and just how he has a vision of really serving humanity, and we can make a difference in people's lives by, purchasing products, and also thinking about people, appreciating them, sending them good vibes.
Yeah, it matters. It really does matter. Yeah. I think it's a lot of things. It's something that's really easy to miss in everyday life, but that's, to me, one of the beauties of what Raj is doing is bringing that mindfulness, that presence into everyday experiences,
right?
Like drinking your cup of coffee and sending some love towards the people who grew the beans.
Exactly.
You know? And it brings back to that real feeling of awe. Mm-hmm. Of all the unseen helping hands, to take it from one step all the way to the other. And there's love all the way up. There can be love all the way up and down the chain of that. And that is definitely something that's going to make life a little easier.
And help us to be believers.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. Hey, go ahead and share this episode if you know of somebody that you think would appreciate it, learn from it, love it. And we will hear you and see you next week. Namaste. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.